It is time. It's time to stop hiding. It's time to stand up. It's time for Christians to come together, to share their testimony, to inspire hope, and to join their brothers and sisters as we answer the call. It is time to wake up the lions. And we have a lion with us today, folks. Please welcome to the show Doug Ell, author of a whole bunch of books that I'm going to let him tell you about, and a friend of mine from one of my other podcasts who I am blessed to have on with me today. This is absolutely right up his alley, and you're going to love this conversation. I'm telling you right now. So please welcome in Doug Ell. Doug, how you doing today, brother?
I'm doing great, and thank you so much for having me, Rory.
Thank you for being here.
Looking forward to talking to you again.
Yeah, thank you. Me too. This is a very different podcast than the last one you were on, and we talked about it a little in our pre-interview. But I mean, to say this is right up your alley is an absolute understatement. Really enjoyed our last conversation, and I'm glad you came on today. Tell everybody a little bit about who is Doug Ell. What are you about? What brings you here today?
Oh wow. Well, I'll give you the shorter version because you don't have 3 weeks. But I grew up in a Christian household and an extremely nerdy, shy, introverted kid, which I still am today, although I've learned to overcome it, fortunately, in some ways. Uh, but I grew up with a big smile on my face and I loved God. And then when I got to high school, I read in some book that life could have started in a dirty pond. Did you ever watch that Disney movie Fantasia?
Yeah.
I mean, it's a long time ago, I know, and but there's a scene in it. I think it's Stravinsky's Rite of Spring, where the lightning hits the pond and life starts. Okay, I'm not making this scene up. Go watch the movie.
Right.
So I read that and I thought, well, hey, wait a minute. If it's in a book, in my high school book, it's got to be true, right? Nobody would put any lies in that. So I thought, well, if God didn't create life, then maybe this religion stuff is a bunch of bunk. And and that lie in that high school book, which I will come back to, caused me to lose my faith for a long time.
Yeah.
And it was not till my son was born, and I agreed with my wife who wanted to get baptized, that I went back to church and I said, wow, I'm missing out on something here, Rory. I mean, these people, they got a peace, they got a serenity, they got a joy. Okay, I'm doing great as a lawyer and I'm making money, but that's not where it's at. And I really think that was a blessing from God to let me see that, because so many people can't see that today. They get caught up in the Madison Avenue BS, man.
Yeah.
How many people are buying these books of super yachts in the airport, whatever? I mean, come on. Like, that's supposed to be the best thing on life. No, so I, but I told myself at that point that I wasn't going to believe in God unless I could find scientific evidence. Now, uh, I have a lot of flaws, but I'm really good at math. Okay. I cruised through MIT, graduated early, got straight A in 15 math courses in 7 semesters, studied, and I've got a double majored in physics at the same time, studied graduate. So I said, well, you got to find the evidence, Doug. And once you actually look at it, once you can get past the spiritual blinders, okay, that our society has, the evidence for God is overwhelming. And so, as you know, I just love sharing that story. I mean, I think I think in our last show, you said I'm a unicorn, if I remember that right.
I
And
think I did.
I think you did. And I love that because I mean, I get that I'm different. I never claimed to be normal, but I found God through science. Now, it wasn't science that got me there in the first place. It was walking into that church and seeing that people.
Yeah.
But then science just sealed the deal. Once you take away the blinders, the evidence, fantastic. And it goes on and on. I found so much more. Every week I subscribe to all these things and I'm reading this and it's like, wow, wow, wow. How could people ignore this evidence?
I love that. I love that story. I remember talking about Fantasia with you, and it was funny. After we had that interview before, I went and rewatched that on Amazon because I really wanted to see that. I remembered it, but I didn't remember
Yeah,
it, right?
yeah,
And that is, if that's not just an absolutely overt attempt at saying God doesn't exist, it's just not even funny.
yeah.
It was
People
insane.
see that stuff, and it's got to be true. Well, that's how it happened.
Yeah,
There's so much nonsense. You know, well, we'll get into
I
the
know.
details, but I mean, it's one of the stupidest theories there ever could be from a
Yeah.
scientific standpoint.
Now, you've written several books in and around this topic, right?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah,
Let everybody know real quick, kind of like what the three books are, briefly what they're about. Okay, so that
yeah.
they can go kind of like read about you and what you're thinking and where all this is coming from, and then we'll launch into the actual proof. That sound all right?
Great. So in 2014, I published my first book called Counting to God, which is a little play on words in that I counted through seven areas of science, seven major areas of science that point to God. And I launched it with it. It took me 10 years to write it because the spirit, the demons were on my head and I thought I'd never finish it, but somehow God helped me get through with that.
Yeah.
And I launched it with a talk at MIT. If people want to go to YouTube, Doug Ell, MIT, you can watch my talk there in front of the professors. The From there, I wrote a few years ago um, a novel called Rise Above, which features spiritual warfare. There are demons in this novel, and it's about a very wealthy guy who gets cancer and starts looking, thinking about God. So I had so much fun writing that because when you get to write fiction, you get to make it up. And what was really amazing is I'd sit down in the mornings with my cup of coffee early, and I felt like someone else was writing the story. The ideas just came to me. I'm not saying God was typing the keys, but sometimes it felt like that. I'll tell you, it was weird. But anyhow, so that was my second book, Rise Above, a novel, and my last book. My minister said on my first one, it was kind of technical because I was trying to be super technical. And by the way, no scientist has ever said any of the facts in my books are wrong. Okay.
That's big.
And I deal with a lot of
Yeah.
people think they're real smart, whatever. Uh, so my minister said, you got to make it easier, Doug. Put some pictures in. So my new book is called The God Proofs, and it is a graphic novel. Now, a graphic novel, just to be clear, is not a novel about sex. It's a cartoon book. Okay, so and great illustrator published it with the help of the Discovery Institute out in Seattle, world's number one institute for intelligent design. I just wrote it. They keep any money it makes, but it is a great book. And one of the reviews uh, I read on Amazon recently, someone gave it to their 11-year-old son. He read it in one sitting, and now he sleeps with it at night because he was losing his faith because of this stupid belief that science is contrary to God. So that's the three book. And by the way, in my first book, Counting to God, that's the name of my website, countingtogod.com. You want to learn more about these books, or I do a blog on some of the new scientific evidence that comes on. So that's how people can reach me.
The the stuff that we've talked about before and that is in these books is really amazing. Obviously, it would take a little while to go through all three, but in terms of the proof, because anybody who's listening to this, the first thing they're thinking in their mind is, okay, give me the proof, right? Give me the proof. And of
Yeah,
course, we don't want to give everybody the secret sauce, you know what I mean, and about everything that's in there. If you want to hear all of it, you got to go buy the book, guys. Come on, help us out. But by the same token, I know you want to spread the word also. What are your maybe top few points that you want to make sure people understand when it comes to, hey, there's proof about all of this. Don't be fooled.
sure. Uh, and as a mathematician, I know something about what the word proof means. Okay. Um, all proof starts with certain fundamental, unprovable assumptions. So I'm going to give you my three assumptions, and then I'm going to prove the existence of God. My first assumption is that this world is real. Things are real. Okay. We're not in some sort of computer simulation or whatever. It's no, I mean, you and I are having a real conversation here. I think people can go along with my first assumption. I can't prove it logically, but let's take that as an assumption.
Okay.
My second assumption is that we can trust our senses if we are careful and we verify things. So, for example, if scientists all over the world have discovered that there's DNA in all living things, then I'm going to say that's true. Okay. I can't prove that you can trust our senses and things. And I know that magicians can trick you a little bit, but I'm saying if you're careful, we run into a brick wall. It's a real event. Okay. So, and my third assumption is if there's only one explanation for something, that's true.
Hmm.
Okay.
Sure.
So let's put that together and let's get right to proving the existence of God. We run on biological computer code. It's called DNA. It's in my DNA, it's in
Right.
my genes. The gene is just the section of the code that builds a part called a protein. Um, we have the most fantastic computer code anyone has ever seen inside us. This was acknowledged by Bill Gates, who knows a little bit about code. And it's also found in 2011, right before my first book came out. And I thought, Roy, wow, God put this on my on my desk here for me to write about. 400 scientists worldwide, the best of the best of the best, came out with a study of human DNA. And they said, wow, it's all working. Okay, we don't understand a lot of what it's doing, but this isn't some sort of junk code. I mean, if you heard this, people used to think there was a lot of junk DNA and only a little bit of it did stuff. Well, only a little bit of it is genes that prints out the parts. The other stuff tells you when to print out a part and how to put the parts together and stuff like that. They found there's at least two levels of information in this code.
Wow.
They found things like we have 4 million switches to turn systems on and off. Okay, so let's go back. We have inside us the most fantastic code in the universe. This is scientific fact.
Sure.
The Now, how do you get working complex code? There's only one answer in all of science and all of history, and that is it was designed by a mind. Okay. And it's astonishing to me the denial on that subject. Um, just astonishing. I've been to meetings like at the Harvard Faculty Club, and they debate these kind of issues, and these people are so caught in their head they can't see it. Rory, I'm not kidding you. They can't see it. It's like St. Paul wrote, claiming to be wise, they became fools. There's no other explanation. As a mathematician, just common sense. You can't get things in the right order by chance, and people don't appreciate the astronomical odds of that. I mean, just to give you an example, if you try to write down 100 word letters and spaces, 100 letters and spaces in some random order, the chances that you're going to get a real English sentence are about the same as picking a grain of sand out of a pile of sand as big as the universe. And I know that's, but I mean, you start doing the mathematics and multiplying probabilities, you cannot get working code by chance. You can't
Yeah.
introduce errors into code and get better code, this ridiculous Darwinian theory. I mean, the facts are clear. There's only one explanation for working code, and that is we were designed.
Yeah. I mean, that's I love the way you just did that. I absolutely love the way you just did that because there are certain assumptions that have to be true in order to come up with what is proof. And I love the way that you broke it all down. The idea of grand design is like, look, what are your options at that point? Is that we're, some test planet and there's some grand Martian that's bigger than everybody, and we don't know what is outside of our galaxy. I mean, all this other nonsense. There's nothing that we can prove. There's nothing that we can even assume based on what we already know. And yet, you sit there and you say these things, and people go, "Well, I don't like that, so that's not true."
Yeah. Or I said this at one of those dinners at the Harvard Faculty Club to this real fancy Harvard professor of physics who was about to head off for a meeting at the White House. And he said, well, maybe it's little green men. I mean, come on. That's the kind of denial that our society is in and the mindset people are in. But it's not just that, Rory. I mean, I proved the existence of a designer.
Yeah,
There's no scientific explanation for why anything exists. Something outside of space and time created our universe. I mean, I'm now getting into some of the things I went through in my books,
yeah,
and the laws of physics are designed just right for life to exist. There's so much on that. I mean, Stephen Hawking, who went to his death an atheist, was one of the people who proved that the force of gravity is so fine tuned. It's like to picking the right marble out of a pile that goes out to the nearest star. Okay, it's exactly right for the universe to be what it is. And that's just one of 100 different scientific constants. The ratio of the proton to the electron, the speed of light, and so on. I know it gets real nerdy and technical, but the point is, we live in a designed, created universe, and life was created and designed. And that's the Bible in a scientific nutshell.
right. After you and I met the last time, that was one of the things that kept going through my head was that, there is all of this grand design, but the part that's almost unsettling is that if any one of these things ceased to exist or was randomly built and didn't come together the way it did, then we're not here.
Yeah,
So for all
you
of
know.
those things that you just mentioned, like flippantly, right? I mean, electrons
Oh
and
yeah.
the whole bit gravity.
Oh, it
One
goes on
thing
and on.
doesn't line up.
I don't remember 9/10 of them. I mean,
Right.
it's beyond belief. There are many papers on this. It's truly astonishing
Yeah.
how fine-tuned the universe is. Just, the properties of water. You could go on and on. The fact that our atmosphere is opaque to visible light, things you don't think about, okay?
Right.
Why does ice float? If ice didn't float, if it sank to the bottom, you wouldn't have life on Earth. Uh,
Wow.
Things would freeze over. Okay. And there's so much, and water is a great solvent. I mean, there's so much about the universe that we have found is super, super special.
Man. So what do you, I mean, other than the green men comment, we all know that spiritual warfare
Yeah.
is real. And so you've obviously been hit with, all sorts of resistance to this sort of
Oh, yeah.
statement, thinking, proof. What are the answers people give you, then other than it must be little green men? How do they come up with an argument to debate you on any of
They don't debate me, they change the subject. I'm telling you the truth.
this?
They got no comeback. I'm
Oh, that's
sorry.
good.
It's not that I'm a great debater. It's just, God is real and the facts are undeniable. But if you read the literature, they got all sorts of nonsense. So they say, well, here's an example. So life is fantastic. You got to start with the code. You got to start with machines to read the code. You got to start with machines to copy the code, machines to print out the parts from the code, and so on. And so everybody realizes, well, people say, well, this is an impossible problem. But there are scientists. 30 of scientists wrote a paper saying, well, life came from outer space, obviously, because there's a lot of stars and planets out there. Well, okay, look at that from a mathematical standpoint. The number of stars and planets out there is like a number with 25 zeros, pretty big number. The chances of life starting by chance is a number with 100 billion zeros. Not 100 billion, but 100 billion zeros. So you subtract 25 from 100 billion, you still get 100 billion. It can't happen. Not only that, the idea that the fragile chemicals of life suddenly floated into our atmosphere from outer space, where there's all this radiation and other stuff that kills anything instantly. Space is not a friendly place. I mean, we have just the perfect atmosphere on Earth to let us survive in it. Um, it's such a stupid idea, but 30 prominent scientists said, well, life needs to come from outer space. Here's another,
Wow.
the stupidity is incredible. So some of the most fantastic DNA code is in an octopus. Octopuses have a central brain and then parts of brains in their legs. They have 9 brains. They have 3 hearts. And if you've ever seen the pictures, I mean, they can go on the seafloor and instantly transform their bodies to camouflage themselves to look exactly like the seafloor. They have so much. Scientists have discovered, and people have written this in papers, that the DNA for a code for an octopus is so different from anything else. And their theory is it came from outer space. I mean, go figure. The denial is crazy. They this stuff where the physics stuff, they got no explanation for how the universe got created. They've got their theories, but they don't hold up to it. It's kind of like there's going to be this one little trick. Did you ever go down this rabbit hole on the internet of just read on, you're going to get to this one little trick. Well, that's where people think it is with Darwinian evolution. It's just like, well, there's somebody knows the answer to this, or we're going to figure it out. The Royal Society of England a few years ago had a big meeting, and the subject of the meeting is how do we fix Darwin's theory? Because we know that accidental mutations can't create the working code,
Okay.
and they wouldn't let the people who said the code was designed speak. So they came up with all these nonsense theories, and ended up with obviously no solution without God.
Okay. So the bottom line is they're saying, I don't believe in God. I'm not going to believe in God. Doesn't matter. I'd rather believe in some unknown space alien theory than
Mm-hmm.
believe in God. And that's it.
Yep,
Okay. Gotcha. Just wanted to put a
that's kind of
little.
what it comes down to, I think. Um,
Yeah. I mean,
you know,
I've had the privilege of talking to a lot of other experts, on different topics. I just talked to a gentleman about the geographical proof, of things that happened in the Bible and finding actual
yeah,
locations and all of this.
yeah,
And I think that's part of the conversation too for me. I hear what you have to say. I hear what they have to say. And just in your argument alone, the only response is, well, it was created by some other being, but I don't believe that it was God. I believe it was something else.
right,
But then there's no backup to their something else. There's
yeah,
no geographical or historical or recorded or eyewitness proof to any of that. But over here, in terms of the existence of God, there's all sorts of, I mean, volumes of
all
information.
sorts of evidence, and yeah, the biblical archaeologists are doing a fantastic job, and that's a whole nother series of programs you could do and talk to them about it.
Right.
Finding this cursed tablet that Joshua planted exactly as the Bible said. Uh, so much they know where the Hebrews lived in Egypt. They know where Sodom and Gomorrah, where they can find the sand turned into glass by God's lightning strike. I mean, there's just so much, and then of course you've got that 2,000 years of predictions about Jesus coming, and it all came true.
Right. Yeah. This is the only grand design explanation that has all sorts of other proof behind it. Everything else is just another theory because they don't want to believe this one.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So all that, along with everything else, which is kind of a great segue, one of the things we try and cover is, talking about spiritual warfare. You mentioned trying to write your book and how you felt like you were actually
Yeah,
being, pushed backwards. It sounds like you've
yeah,
experienced some of that in your life.
I have. And when I published my novel, one of my friends said, "You better be careful because the demons are coming after you." So I ended my novel with a prayer I got from my minister uh, that I try and say. And if I could just read it to you, it's not too long. It
Sure,
says,
please.
Saint Michael, the archangel, defend us in battle. Be our protection against the wickedness and snares of the devil. May God rebuke him, we humbly pray. And do thou, O Prince of the heavenly host, by the power of God, cast into hell Satan and all the evil spirits who prowl through the world seeking the ruin of souls. And I, as St. Paul said, put on the armor of God.
Right.
But I do feel that I've come across incredible walls, and I do feel that some people are uh, stuck. The demons have control of their minds. I can't just, I mean, if God created the universe, clearly he created angels and demons too, and they don't live in our, God is outside of time and space, and how angels and demons can go in and out of time and space, I don't know. Nobody knows, but they are real. And that's a whole nother subject. If you read books by exorcists and things like that, I mean, the hairs on the back of your neck will stand up straight. It's so scary and evil, some of this stuff. Uh, so yeah, I felt it. I think I've been blessed in that God has protected me from most of it. But I see it in other people, and I just see it destroying their lives. I've had the occasion in my life to deal with some extremely wealthy people, multi-billionaires, people that own NFL teams.
Mm.
And most of them are really good people, but there's some who are just caught behind the demons of power and money. You can just sort of see it in their eyes.
Wow. That's an incredibly powerful statement when it's people that you know and people you've come across, in person, and it's not just things
Yeah,
you've read and seen. The friend that gave you that warning, you better be careful, right?
yeah.
It's when I started this podcast, I said, "Hey, I'm going to go ahead and put out some posts, right, on social media. Let everybody know it's coming." I put out one reel, man, and what I got in response to that within 24 hours was roughly 270 comments, and I'm generalizing, but roughly 70 of them were positive. Hey, can't wait, sounds
Mhm.
great, and somewhere around 200 of the other comments were varied from, lightly telling me I was an idiot, and that I was believing a lie to threatening, like
Yeah,
you better not. You know what I mean? Was one of
yeah,
the comments, and I just kind of sat back and I, I've been through this before. My other podcast, I received 3 death threats in the time I've been doing that one,
wow, wow,
and that's
wow.
just on
That's
masculinity.
wow, wow.
So I was kind of ready for that.
Yeah,
But you know what I decided a long time ago, and I'm sure you've kind of been there too, when it comes to the spiritual warfare stuff and what you get from other folks, they are being pushed to hate
yeah.
you as much
They
as
are.
we're being pushed to spread his word. And
Yeah,
so, I want to try and just forgive and say, look, it's not really their fault. They're being manipulated into this and they just don't know it.
yeah,
And by the same token, if people don't hate you, if they're not coming after you, then they're not afraid of you.
yeah.
And they're only afraid of you when you are going to make a
They
difference.
are.
And you're making a difference, brother.
The death threat scares me that you got. I mean, I didn't. I put some of my posts on my Facebook page, and one I put out, and I got like 300 comments, and I would say they were 98% of you're the stupidest person in the world, or worse.
Right.
Okay. I mean, of course, nobody had looked up my background. Um, Whether I'm smart or not, you can figure out. I don't know, but I've done pretty good in education, and I've accomplished a few things in my life. But I got all these. You're the stupidest person, and this is the worst BS. And how could you even put this nonsense out there? It's There's a lot of sadness that people just they can't grasp it. They walk away
Yeah.
or they attack back to defend their uh, internal lifestyle.
Well, and that's just it too. Even when you're not attacking anybody, if all you do is say you believe in God, then people go, "Oh, well,
Yeah.
then you must also believe," and then they like fill in the blanks for you. You
Oh,
know?
yeah. And they'll come up with all this nonsense and
Right.
try to get you to, I don't know. And then they'll try to find something that they can say you're crazy about.
Right.
Um, but
Yeah.
it's real, and science proves it is real. And no one has ever. So the simple proof that I gave you right in the beginning, or with my three assumptions, that's in my graphic novel, The God Proofs. And it goes into other proofs for the existence of God. That's the logical proof. There's common sense and whatever, but nobody's given even a half-hearted technical rebuttal to any of that. It's
Right.
just so obvious.
One of the other things you're doing with these books is you're building discipleship. Because, anybody who's out there who might be on the fence and is just saying,
Yeah.
just give me something to hang on to. Give me some kind of
Yeah.
proof. Give me a little help here. Give me something I can use to defend myself at Thanksgiving, right? Right.
Yeah.
When I'm the only one in the room who believes, right? You and I spoke briefly about, building discipleship, beforehand, before we
Yeah.
started the show. And so many people, when they get into this and they start thinking about, building discipleship, they think they have to be like on the mountain, talking to 5,000 people and, spreading
Yeah.
the word, like they think of Moses or something, and they don't realize that building discipleship is simply leading by example to start
Yeah.
with. Your take on building discipleship and how you do it and, how simple it can be. Your thoughts.
I think I keep coming back to 1 Peter 3:15. Always be prepared to give a reason for the hope that is within you, but do so with gentleness and respect. And I may have gotten that wrong, but that's pretty close. Okay. 1 Peter 3:15. Uh, God doesn't want you to get into big debates with atheists. But if people ask why there's joy in your life, what's important to you, don't be afraid to share. And a lot of people are afraid to share because they think, oh, science is contrary to God. I believe in science. Well, science isn't a religion. So one of the things I try to do is say, well, don't be afraid of science. Embrace science. Science is your friend. But it's one soul at a time. So I'm an old dude, and I live down here in Florida with a lot of old people, and they'll come up saying, well, their kids or their grandkids are turning away from God. What can I do? And I talk to them, and sometimes they give them my books or just the arguments. But it's one-on-one fighting these demons.
Yeah. Yeah. Everybody, one of the things that I tell folks is just share how you feel.
Yeah,
That's
just
it.
be honest.
Right.
Yeah,
You know,
give a reason for the hope that is within you. I think
yeah.
that says it brilliantly. And you don't have to get into arguments with people. Just give your reasons.
Right.
And if there's a lot of talk in the Bible about God hardened their hearts. He hardened Pharaoh's heart. I'm not talk about it, but that phrase comes up in the Bible. Excuse me.
Sure.
And I think that seems to be a common condition of the human heart. It's hard when it comes to looking at God, and uh, I think we can't overcome that by ourselves, no matter how logical or mathematically compelling the arguments are. People don't want to uh, listen, but if they ask you why the hope is within you, why you have that smile on your face, why you feel you have a purpose in life, don't be afraid to share.
Yeah, for sure. I think don't be afraid is one of the biggest issues that we try and push on this show. With my other podcasts that I've been doing for years and years and years, I've had, men and women come on those shows, um, and ask out loud, is it okay to talk about God here? And so, part of my goal is to just we shouldn't have to say that.
Yeah,
you know.
right. We shouldn't have to say that. Absolutely. No, I think what you're doing is wonderful.
Well, I appreciate
Absolutely.
that. I appreciate it. The other part of discipleship that I think, that I hope people start to understand, I'd love to hear your thoughts on this too, is that you don't have to convert somebody.
Yeah,
You
yeah,
know, people feel like, well, I talked to them about my faith, but they still walked out and said, well, I don't believe. That's not failure. You didn't
no,
do anything wrong. In order to succeed in building discipleship and spreading the word, all
no.
you have to do is plant a seed. And that's all you need to do.
Amen, amen. And
That's it.
the truth is, you and I can't convert anybody.
Right.
We can't. Okay, that's going to be an internal decision of a person as to and so you can't judge success or failure by whether someone sees the light or not.
Yeah.
But you can share. And one of the things I think my books do is they give people things to talk about. If you're up against an atheist, just ask, well, okay, you don't believe in God. How did life get started? And they'll give you this, dirty pond stuff. And you say, well, if you really look at it, because that based on a 1953 experiment, the Miller-Urey experiment that has been discredited in every scientific article since then. It was a bunch of junk. Uh, and there's no explanation for how the code could have gotten in the first place, in the right order in the first place, just from getting randomly hit by electricity. I mean, and the parts of life are so impossible to get together. So just start the conversation. You can't convert people. I agree.
Yeah. I love that you said that way. And I think that's a fallacy that we have. We feel like we have to convert people over. And you're right, you can't. Someone has to make that internal decision to let God in. What I try to encourage folks to do is, you know, you can't sunshine can't get in through that closed fist. You know what I mean? All I'm
Yeah,
encouraging folks to do is just plant the seed, loosen that fist just enough to let a little bit of light in
yeah,
there, and that's
yeah,
all it will take for people to start, having their own conversation about what do I believe and what do I want to consider and what do I want to think and that kind of thing.
yeah,
So, I mean, it really and truly is just that. There was something else I wanted to ask you too, just in particular. We've talked about the dirty pond theory and stuff. Another one of my favorites, of course, is the Big Bang
yeah, yeah.
theory. And I didn't want to leave here today without at least addressing that one because I know that when we start having these conversations, that's one of the first things people bring up because they can literally go, "Oh, just Big Bang Theory," and you go, "Really? What is the Big Bang Theory?" And they don't know. They just know that
They
it's a
don't know, right? They don't know.
thing.
Well,
What's
it's
your
a really
response to
funny
that?
TV show. It's a really funny TV show,
Hilarious
which I
show.
love about nerdy people like me. But the Big Bang Theory, as proposed by people who deny God, I mean, who lit the spark? Let's start with that. Okay. It's clear something outside of space and time brought our universe into existence. Okay. And this business that there are other universes, well, that's been shown to be scientific nonsense. I won't bore you with that. Uh, but, people have argued the universe popped out of a quantum field. Well, I mean, technically that's wrong. these virtual particles that so-called pop out and last for, about as much time as it takes for a beam of light to cross a pencil. I mean, when they have, you always get an equal number of matter and antimatter particles. There's no antimatter we found in the universe out there. Everything's perfectly designed. People don't understand the Big Bang Theory. We don't have time to get into all its flaws
Sure.
here. People can Google it if they want to learn it. Uh, but think about it. The Big Bang Theory is essentially a theory that the universe was created. So who created it? How did it come to be? Now, the first law of thermodynamics, to get a little technical here, but it's one of the most important laws of physics, is that you can't create matter and energy. Okay, you can burn a little matter off, and that's an atomic bomb, and change its form, sort of melt a little matter, but you can't change the total amount in the universe. Fundamental number one law of physics. So when the universe was created, that law was sure violated big time. I've told people, and this is another thing I argued at the Harvard Faculty Club. One guy says, "Well, I don't believe the laws of physics can change." Well, you can't get the present universe out of today's laws of physics. You have to dig into this stuff. I think it's uncomfortable, but just, who created the Big Bang? Who lit the torch?
Yeah. Yeah. Excellent. Excellent. I love that. And honestly, I think sometimes it only takes one or two rebuttals to maybe make somebody think.
Yeah,
And I love that that's what you're
yeah.
doing with your books. I love that's what you're doing with your research is you're giving everybody, a chance to continue the conversation past where the deniers can take theirs. And I really do love that. So I mean, thank you for doing the work that you do, brother. I appreciate it. I know everybody else that's listening does, and you're doing good work. So yeah, you probably should be a little careful.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah. All right. Listen, as we kind of wrap things up here, and I appreciate your time, Doug. I really do. Thank you for coming on this show and sharing everything you have. I just want to give you a chance for parting thoughts, for our listeners. Maybe you leave behind, something for them to chew on, think about, anything like that. The floor is yours for the last couple of seconds here, and whatever your final thought is, brother, go for it.
Well, I want to come back to something you said, Rory, and that is, uh, don't be afraid to talk about God. You don't have to talk about it scientifically like I do, but you can talk about God in your life and how it's changed. And I see the hand of God so strongly in my life. Uh, so don't be afraid to talk about God, and don't fall into this cultural nonsense that science is against God. All of human experimentation and history points to the existence of a creator, points to the truth of the Bible. The discoveries are ongoing all the time. If you want to learn about archaeology, subscribe to the magazine Bible and Spade. If you want to learn about the science for creation, you can go to creation.com, Answers in Genesis, Institute for Creation Research, all those websites, and find things supporting the literal truth of the Bible. So, but don't be afraid to share. It's all true.
I love that. That's a great way to wrap. I really do. I appreciate you, Doug. Tell everybody how they can reach you, how they can find you, how they can look up your stuff.
Countingtogod.com. Go to YouTube, Doug Ell, MIT, watch the video and some others. The Star of Bethlehem was a real conjunction uh, between was when Jupiter and Venus kissed in the sky. And I get into that in my novel, Rise Above. It was a real event. And the Magi showed up 6 months later. They were with an army. There's so much out there. Go to countingtogod.com, read my blog. So much more.
Love it. Love it. I'll make sure that stuff's in the show notes for everybody. Author and goodness, mathematician and Christian man. Doug L. Thank you so much for being here with us today. for sharing everything you did. And you truly are a unicorn, brother. I appreciate all the work you're doing. I
I
really do.
appreciate what you're doing, Rory. Thank you very much. I always enjoy talking to you.
Thank you. Thank you. Folks, it is time. It's time to wake up the lions. Uh, more than that. More than that. It's time for you to take your rightful place with your brothers and your sisters and let them hear you roar. The world is ready. You are ready. You just have to believe it. Until next time.